Hello and welcome to another Let's Play Civilization 4 series. This is the Asharid Het. I do have a bad habit of starting these and not finishing them. I apologize for the last one. Hopefully that was at least somewhat enjoyable for those few of you who did watch it. I was in the middle of testing the current revision of the subversion, and many of the changes that were made serially until the new version of the mod was released were not save game compatible, so I did want to continue that, but there came a point where I updated the mod and it simply wasn't save game compatible anymore, so my experience level with the game has increased quite a bit since then as well. This one I would like to carry through to completion, and I want to try a new civilization I've never played with before. It's lucrative, it's a classic choice in many games. I've just never done them in this mod, and that will be the Greeks. Particularly, I want to be Themistocles. Those of you who watched the previous Let's Play, that was something of a learning experience for me as well as for you potentially. Some of the audience was more experienced than I was, but I'm not going to try to explain everything so much as I did previously. I'll assume those of you who are watching this are already familiar with Realism Invictus for Civ 4. If you have questions, you can leave them in the comments. I'll do my best to answer them, but I also make no pretense about being an expert either. The Greeks are interesting in this mod to me for one specific reason. Well, really, it's two reasons, or a phenomenon of two reasons, that as an AI in my games, they are almost always at the top. They are usually in the winning position every single time they appear. Most of the time, that is going to be Ionis Metaxas or Pericles. Don't know why Pericles, but I think it's this progressive trait, the research bonus and the reduced upgrade cost seems to be potentially overpowered, or in any case something the AI handles very well. I want to try them. Oh yes, and the dual factor of that is I think they have one of the most terrible unique units ever. As cool as this model is, one of the 300 Spartans, you see the Lambda on his Hoplon and everything. This is a powerful early game unit, but it upgrades to nothing. It is a complete dead end. Whereas most of the unique units from other civs have completely normal upgrade paths. The production and experience you invest in fighting with these units carries you through to the end of the game, and in this case it's simply a dead end. If we look at their other stuff, the Olive Grove, that's fairly modest, honestly. You can put it on a hill, sure, but why in the early game, when happiness is much more of a bottleneck than food 90% of the time, you would prefer to put a food improvement on your hills rather than simply mining them in an era when you get an additional hammer from the mining technology itself and from the slave market under slavery. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. This is all fairly modest. Sure, the commerce bonus is nice, but hammers are relatively scarce early in the game until you get to industrialization later on. They're somewhat hard to come by. So, whereas food is not. Typically there's a food glut in the early game because you don't have the institutional or infrastructural capacity to support a large population, and if you turn avoid growth on in your cities, that typically results in wasted yield if you're not carefully micromanaging it, or turning it into settlers, workers, or irregulars, which all take food as a production input. So I think they have a fairly weak unique improvement, a very, very short-lived, strong early game one, which that you can do a lot with that, but inherently I don't like the concept that it's a dead end. These units will eventually completely expire, as good as they are in their own time. And then the Hypaspistei. This one actually looks relatively decent, especially the considerable bonus against archery units, which are pretty invulnerable to most unit classes in the game. However, their definitely niche utility and very strong city defense with scaling unit costs means that they're not a very viable choice offensively unless you want to defend your cities with other things which are definitely suboptimal relative to them. So regardless, an archer or two in a stack can be really hard to deal with. Archers in cities can be especially hard to deal with. So this unit looks pretty good actually, but it too upgrades to nothing. So I guess this was more or less intentional, but the Greek civilization seems to shine greatly in the classical era, and really it doesn't have a lot going for it later on in the game. And yet the AI nearly always does very well or wins outright with them consistently. So that conundrum is what makes them appealing to me, in addition to their, being one of the more iconic civilizations in human history, or at least Western historiography's version of that, which of course omits a lot. But that aside, their buildings, the Agora, replaces the city square, which gives you 10 commerce, 10% and 10% respectively commerce and culture as a bonus. This adds 5% science, which is pretty nice, and I think that's it. So they have the same hammer cost. This is a really nice, attractive model, but that's not really that big of a deal. I guess 5% throughout the whole game is significant, but that's nothing I would rush to do. Make sure I build everywhere. And then the Gymnasium, if it was German, I don't know how Greeks would say it, replaces the tavern, 80 hammer cost, 1 culture, 1 health. So the tavern doesn't do either of those. Strangely, this doesn't give you an espionage bonus the way that a simple tavern would. Keeps the same happiness bonus for wine and alcohol. And otherwise is the same. This birth rate bonus, though, is pretty nice, I will have to say. And this is not a building that really expires. The tavern is a building which lasts throughout the entire game's timeline. So this is fairly nice, but really the rounded picture, the Greek civilization doesn't have amazing bonuses, in my opinion. Others may disagree, but yet, relative to other civilizations, with 1 or 2 exceptions, they nearly always excel in the AI's hands. So I want to give them a try. And I want to be Themistocles in particular because Protective, while a decent trait in the vanilla game, is even more important in Realism Invictus. The barbarians are harsher, and the drill and garrison to your archers, which, as I said previously, are already a particularly powerful unit for most of the game. Really, until gunpowder, archery units are some of the best. That may not be realistic in spite of the mod's name, but that's how it is in the game. The dual bonus for that, they get drill and garrison. That's really nice. Your urban logistics are higher. You can stack more defenders without accruing a punishing malice. And walls, which are high production cost unless you have masonry materials or limestone. I believe it's both. That production bonus is pretty significant. And the Great General generation inside of your borders, which with barbarians, the early phase of the game is going to have a lot of combat inside of your borders, even if you don't get attacked by an opponent. So you're probably going to get 2 generals just from barbarians, most likely, unless you only do 1 city, in which case your defending units XP will cap out beforehand. But I think that's probably an unsung great trait. There's a small community of people who play this. I haven't really heard much against it, but I know in the base game, Protective is kind of sneered at. It was many years ago, maybe the perspective has changed, but the other thing is Seafarer. That +1 trade routes in all coastal cities is huge. Trade in this mod is very, very, very effective. You have to have naval superiority if pirates or enemy AIs can blockade your ports. You don't get trade income, but if you do, especially from late medieval onward, it's immensely lucrative. So an entire new trade route for every single coastal city you have is going to make a big difference. And also the sailor training is a nice trait. If I'm not mistaken, it gives you another movement. No. Oh, it's even way better than that. Okay, yeah. Effectively it does. Later game, because ocean has 2 movement costs, so that -1 basically means you traverse ocean twice as fast. +2 first strikes is enormous. And +25 versus barbarians, which you will be fighting at some time or another. Classical era galley pirates or Renaissance bona fide sailing ship cannon pirates will happen, so that's very, very good. And you can hunt barbs with your coast defense and level them up considerably with the piracy. Oh no, excuse me, the pacification trait. You get a bonus against barbs, which in naval context is pirates. So this sets you up for pretty much having. This is a very effective trait, actually. If you have this, especially in the early phase of naval warfare, where this is galley here, everyone basically has the same thing. There's not really a meaningful difference in naval technology for the first half of the technology tree. That trait is a huge advantage. There are some distinctive galleys that are a little better than others, but for the most part it's a numbers game. So I'm interested in Themistocles for that reason. There are some other interesting Greek leaders. I thought about Alexander, and as I mentioned in my previous Let's Play, every leader has 2 positive traits and 1 negative one. Some of the negatives are significantly more crippling than others. In Themistocles' case, we have a espionage reduction, which that might end up being kind of punishing. We'll see. Depending on how much access enemy spies have to our cities, if they don't have much, it won't be as big of a deal. If they do, it might be. We'll see. But the AI tends to put a lot of commerce into espionage anyway, so if we can up-tech them for that, it may not end up mattering too much. I thought about Alexander. That wonder production malice isn't really as big of a deal as you would think, because wonders are a race. Whoever builds it first gets it. Whoever invested time and effort into it but didn't get there first loses it. Really, that's more a question of research than production. If you're ahead in technology, you can start building the wonder before anyone else. That's going to give you a bigger head start than having hammers in most cases. So, it would be between Themistocles and Alexander. Obviously, he has massive experience bonuses on many unit classes. But at the end of the day, I just kind of prefer Themistocles. So we're going to go with him. And we're going to generate a new map. I tried RI Planet Generator recently. In spite of trying to manipulate the settings so that this wouldn't happen, it still did. That script loves to make really, really irregular, rough, fjorded coastlines. There's no smooth coasts in that, and it's kind of annoying. That can make for interesting games. Lots of water is fun in a way, but it also leads to a lot of awkward movement paths, which I would prefer not to have. So we're going to go with Totestra. This one makes nice, geographically plausible, round, interestingly shaped, well, smooth coastlines and interestingly shaped continents, I should say. So we're going to go with this. The only disappointment I have with Totestra is for some reason it loves to put jungle in your starting capital spot. I don't know why. seems kind of inconsistent, but the landscape shape is a lot more natural looking. Jungle gets chopped sooner or later, and whatever. So I can live with that. I prefer it over the weird coastlines of RI Planet Generator. We'll go with a large, temperate. I did low sea level with RI Planet Generator because I was trying to prevent it from doing that coastline thing, and it still did that. So I'm gonna go back to medium. We'll start in the ancient world like normal. I will do realistic speed. I tried legendary. It's fun, especially from a tactical perspective. The unit movements are more interesting. You get more shelf life out of each unit. War becomes a little bit more efficient as a means of applying an advantage because you can move and heal and fight more with the same units. Whereas, with a faster game pace, time proceeds faster each turn and your units get closer to obsolescence each turn. But in the spirit of the game, we'll do the recommended setting here. It plays fine. I like realistic, honestly. Perhaps I prefer it. If I wanted a war sim, I would play a different game, honestly. Okay, yep, keep minimal empty, break Pangeas, cylindrical. I'm gonna go with some continents, actually. Normally I play few, but let's spice it up. This is just a map gen acceleration setting. I've never had any seriously delayed map generations. Keep that Earth-like. Yeah, like perfect world. It wouldn't be fun if everyone had all their strategic and luxury and food resources. That would defeat the point of having a vie for scarcity, which supplies a lot of the fun in a strategy game. Yep, player equal to AI. That's a big departure from the base game too. The higher your difficulty, the worse your starting location is. The AI in this game is so much better than the vanilla that when everyone kind of has an equal start, I still struggle on Monarch sometimes, and I don't really have an issue with it in the base game anymore. So everyone having an even keel to begin with is more fun, I think. And these deity players on the vanilla game, all credit due to them for mastering a difficult game. They think because they've optimized the patterns of a certain set or paradigm that they're the best with a different set, and that's a question begging setup, really. I would rather face a more intelligent AI that has an even starting position with me than one which just gets thrown all these bones but is still stupid. So anyway, no stabs at the deity players. They are better than me at the base game, so all credit due to them for that. But in any case, I find this to be more fun. We'll do fixed continent split. Yep, reduce mountains. The giant fields of mountains are kind of boring, and we'll do random map seed. Let me change my name from the previous one. We'll just call ourselves Themistocles of Athens. And I overviewed these settings before. I won't explain everything like I mentioned before. I'm just going to play. I'll talk about what I'm doing. Honestly, the audience is probably already pretty familiar with this. I doubt this video is going to get more than a few views anyway, so yep, influence-driven war, protect valuable units. We're going to leave that stuff default. Holy City migration will happen. Leave revolutions on, barb sieves on, tech transfer on, espionage on, etc., etc. No tech trading. And previously in 3.5, non-raging barbs were almost an afterthought. You'd see 3 or 4, and then the barb phase of the early game would end, and that's kind of lame. They're supposed to be a challenging threat early on, so I always play with raging barbs, or had for quite a long time, and it's such a brutal onslaught that you're really playing a tower defense game. You almost can't do anything else in the early game except ensure your cities are defended. So in my most recent game, I turned it off after Walter had apparently adjusted the setting, and there was a decently concerning amount of barb pressure. It wasn't altogether overwhelming, but there was a steady stream of barbs coming in. So I'm going to trust that will be the same way this time, and we'll leave that default. Of course, barbarians, and yeah, I had city flipping after conquest on for a while, but that's kind of dumb because unless you totally kill an opponent, you're never going to have a cultural majority. If you conquer their cities, they'll just flip back. So I see why that's a default setting. I'm going to leave that off. Yep. All right, and let's select Themistocles. We'll take a brief look at our starting position. I might sketch some thoughts about first moves, and then I think I'll sign off. So, Themistocles, Monarch, and all these settings look good, so here we go. I expect jungle, swamp, or both in my big fat cross, but we'll see. In this Let's Play, since this is an official release, I won't have any save game compatibility issues, and I intend to play this one all the way through, so I have a bad habit of starting Let's Plays and not finishing them. I have, going back when I was in middle school, I've got one, didn't finish it, you know, an aborted EU3 one that I didn't finish. And I got a good ways into my last Realism Invictus one, but it too was not finished, so this one I would like to see through to the end. Even if I lose, I at least want to play all the way until it's done. So that is my intention this time, and we'll see where it goes. Yeah, it was actually my suggestion to Walter to change the background music, which really sounded cool before. It was part of Christopher Tin's Calling All Dawn's album. I don't remember what it's called exactly, but it was his, Japanese spiritual song, and this song is fine. I like it well enough, but I don't think it's as good, so I kind of regret making that suggestion, honestly. But oh well, it is what it is. I'm glad we got 3.6. It added and changed quite a bit, and a lot of these improvements are good. I even made some custom changes of my own, nothing like astronomical, but I'll explain those in due course. As far as the pace of uploads goes, I'll probably upload maybe once a week, maybe some weeks more. I might skip a week here or there, but I've got a full-time job, and aside from that, have pretty good amounts of leisure, so that should be a good, reasonable pace to expect. Alrighty, I can see in the mini-map this looks temperate. I don't see any jungle. There might be, but we'll find out. Alright, this is a great start. Were it not for this potato, I think we would definitely need to go pastoral nomadism. We've got 2 fish, 3 cow, unless there's some to my south, which I doubt. No jungle, 3 hills, fresh water, and we're coastal. So this is an excellent start. I'm really happy about this. So like I said, we'll probably ignore this potato field, go pastoral nomad. The enormous amount of food we'll get from these cows easily go towards a couple settlers for, early game setup, some workers. And then if we get to bronze working early enough, we can start building lots of warband because they take food as an input. And we should be relatively safe from that. We do start with a warrior, so whatever tribal villages we unlock, there's a chance that they can spawn barbarians that can end the game for us. I wish that wasn't even a possibility, but unfortunately it is. So, yeah, we'll see what the immediately surrounding land reveals, but this is a really, really nice looking start. I'm thinking we'll probably go worker first, do a standard. No horses. I'll probably go agriculture AH, even if we do pastoral nomadism. That still lets us build a public well. It still natively reduces epidemic chance, and livestock food bonuses increase that. So, and of course our olive grove, but exactly like I said, there's no shortage of food in this spot for a very long time. Happiness will be a much, much more significant bottleneck. So those are some tentative thoughts before we get going. I wanted to keep this intro video fairly short, explain who I wanted to be, what the plan was, and just get the game going. Next installment, we will actually start properly playing. I look forward to making that video, and I'm also excited to be starting another Let's Play. This time, I intend to follow it through to the end, sink or swim, win or lose. I think it'll be a good time. So, thank you for watching. This is the Ashard Het signing off.